Welcome to Spiritual as Fuck,
Spiritual as Fuck.
a podcast where we explore everything outside of the ordinary. I'm Liz Volpe. I'm a social entrepreneur, now psychic medium, teacher and mentor, with a huge passion to inspire people to dream big and change the world.
I'm Diane Driscoll, a coach, facilitator and speaker. I'm also a psychic intuitive, learning to incorporate my spiritual gifts into my life and business.
We're here today to share real and raw spiritual stories. It's going to give you a safe space to challenge what's normal and have some serious fun along the way.
We hope you're ready to get spiritual as fuck.
Before we get started today, we have one exciting thing to announce. To celebrate our 10th episode, we have decided to host our very first online Spiritual as Fuck catch-up. After receiving tons of messages from you guys, and of course a nudge from those above, we think it's time to get you involved. So, on the 7th of June at 7 p.m. AEST time, Diane and I will be hosting The Channel, an event that will bring all of our gang together to chat through all things out of the ordinary. It will be a chance to get curious, share your stories, explore your experiences, and ask Diane and I anything you like. Attendees are even going to get a free gift from our buddy Dr. D. Martini. And here's some big news before anybody else. Now, we have no idea what will happen on the day, but definitely expect it to be fun and interesting with a few surprises thrown in. And you never know, I may even get some messages for you from Spirit as we go. We would love to have you involved. To grab a ticket, head to our website, spiritualaf.co. And we'll also post the link in our show notes today. Now over to Diane to talk about episode 10.
Welcome to episode 10. In episode 9, we were privileged to have Vincent Todd Tolman share his incredible life after death story with us. This episode is a continuation of our time with Vinney. We pick up at the point where Vinney has just finished telling us his story. Liz and I share the impact that Vinney's story has had on us, as well as taking the opportunity to ask lots of questions to better understand his life after death experience. If you haven't listened to Vinney's story in episode 9, please go back and have a listen before you dive into this episode. Please note that Vinney uses the terms God and heaven throughout his story. However, he extends these terms to include source, spirit, universe, Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh, so it is applicable to all, no matter what your personal faith or beliefs.
But it's led me to here, and that's my story.
Wow. We had to sit on mute there because I think there'd just be too much gasping, tears, and these sounds in the background. But wow, thank you so much for sharing, Vinney.
Vinney, I just have to say that, like as Liz said, we had to go on mute, and I know you could see our visual responses. You couldn't hear us, but you could see the tears. We both had boxes of tissues at the ready. I just want to say, having read, well, I was going to say I read your book, but I listened to it on Audible. But what really came to me is that there is so much power in the gift of your story. So the gift of your story, being able to share it on podcasts, and I've listened to a couple of different iterations, but something new comes to light with every time that you share it. And that is why we wanted to do it justice with not asking questions through your retelling of it. But then through the book, it's like there's deeper learning into those 10 principles. There's, for me, I had to message Liz the other day and say, I literally cried for the last hour of the book. Like I sobbed uncontrollably. So I cried throughout the other parts of it, but the last hour of the book about your, just the love of family, about your beautiful wife and how you had met. And just that, like for me, that that experience that you had with your grandma as well, and her transition to the afterlife. There's so much more in the book that could possibly be told in a single podcast. So I definitely encourage people to, if you want to hear more, like go get it on Audible, get it on Kindle, or order it from the website. But I just want to thank you. You mentioned at the very beginning about about authenticity and vulnerability. And, I have felt that, heart connection to everything that you have said. And that it just shows. And, you know, not that I want to bring this into male or female, but generally, you know, speaking, women wear their heart on their sleeves a little bit more. And it's just so beautiful to see so much love, so much vulnerability, so much authenticity coming through a male representation or a male energy. And I just think, gosh, I want so much of this for the world. And I think that your gift is that ripple effect out into the world. Like, sharing this message is hugely important. And I know, like, it has deeply impacted me and Liz, because it was Liz who found you that day on her holidays when she was listening to the podcast. Liz, is there anything you wanted to share from your personal experience of Vinney's story?
There's one particular instant impact, actually, that the story had on me. And it's really funny. For the last, I don't know, 6-7 years, I've had this huge fear of flying. And, you know, I was on my holiday and I listened to the podcast, and I was finding myself in tears at really random times of the day, just exploring your story, Vinney, and remembering certain points of the story. And I guess what really got me with it was the beauty of finding yourself in heaven, and the fact that you really wanted to get back there. You know, I know on the interview I heard it was that after it happened, you actually went and searched for the most dangerous jobs in the world.
I did.
Because you just wanted to die again.
I did. In fact, just so people know, that's going to be an underwater welder. Like a lot of life insurance companies, they won't let you buy life insurance if you do that for a job, because there is such a high fatality rate. And the second most, at least back then, this was back 2003, the second most was going to be a crab fisherman, like king crab fisherman up in Alaska. So I actually had signed on a wait list before I met my wife. Once I met my wife, I did go on there and I like canceled my wait list. But yeah, I really wanted to get back there as soon as possible. And it's funny, you mentioned getting on a plane. We were just on a plane as a family. We don't go as a family on a plane very often, but we have a special calling to some mountains in Georgia and Tennessee, where we're going to be building a healing sanctuary in the future. And in the process of, you know, forecasting that, figuring out where that is going to exist, we had to all fly out to Georgia. And I nudged my teenager and I said, "Hey, this might be it. We could all go to heaven." And I did it in a loving way, but my teenager took it in like a "Dad, you can't say that." And then she thought of, but it was funny though, she thought about it for a minute and she's like, "It wouldn't be so bad. It wouldn't be so bad to go all together like that." So yeah, it's a different perspective for sure. Sometimes if there's like a near miss in the car, I'm like, "Oh, we were so close. We almost got there."
And I think that's just what I absolutely love, because this fear of flying it's just actually quite ridiculous that I have. But, you know, 2 days after listening to the podcast, I sat on the plane to go home, and what normally would be an extremely uncomfortable 2.5 hours where I'm sweating and I'm, you know, thinking silly, really fearful thoughts, like holding my children's hands and, you know, getting the support from them, which also is really silly. It was a completely different experience.
Yeah.
And I sat there and just recounted your words and sat and imagined the feeling of being in heaven and the love, and just realized that actually, what have I really got to be scared of? And yeah, that was the first, I guess, ripple effect that it had on me, which was just amazing for me.
Well, God knew what God was doing when they created the veil of forgetfulness. Because if we didn't go through that, we'd be like kindergartners who just wanted to go back home. We'd be like, "No, this is too hard."
Yes.
So we have to pass through that veil of forgetfulness. Otherwise, we would just instantly want to go right back. And that's also why babies cry so much. Because they were just and in fact they're kind of in that transitioning process where they're coming out of that space into our space. And you can see it in their eyes when they're kind of like playing on that side and then they're with you. And that whole process is quite uncomfortable. So that's why they have to be babies who can't speak. Otherwise, they'd have a story to tell.
It's interesting because you speak in the book about that sense of homesickness, like a homesickness for wanting to go back there. And for me, one of the profound things was just, you know, you talk about love, you talk about joy, but tapping into that what I felt was the sense of awe, absolute sheer awe and wonder. And I know I experienced this in my life, and I can't remember whether it was a podcast interview that you'd done or whether it was through the book, but I remember it was like almost being afraid to tap into that or allowing yourself to feel that too much in the physical plane right now.
Oh yeah.
And it made me realize how much I do that as well. I almost think that I'm going to burst with the sense of awe and joy and love and these, higher vibrational feelings. But through the books and the podcast and just hearing your story made me think, no, I actually purposefully I'm spending time in that state every day to just tap into that and allow myself. And if I cry, and I do a lot, if I cry, that's okay, because allowing that to flood through just means that you build the capacity to be able to feel it more and more and more. And that was why when you're sharing your story in such a vulnerable way, and we can see that profound effect, and we know by hearing and seeing you, because for those who watch on YouTube, it's like, we know we're only scratching the surface of what you experience, like literally just that tiny scratch of it. We know that there's so much more. And if we know there's so much more, then that's what there is to look forward to. And for me, I guess raised a Catholic, I don't believe in but I don't believe in the personification of a God. And yes, you use the term God, but you've also explained that it's so much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's that
so much
sense
bigger.
So much bigger. There are no words. There are no words. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, the force itself is just so tremendous. It's bigger than what words can describe.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to know that, obviously, if we just kind of recap on timeline. So 2003, correct, was when you were pronounced dead, to the point of being put into a body bag. Like that for me, when I heard that, I'm claustrophobic at the best of times, but that's deader than dead, that you're in a body bag. Then, the whole time, 3 days later, reawakening at 1:11. When you said 1:11, that was new information to me. Maybe I just didn't digest it previously, but it was like, there's a sign. And then the book only being released 6 months ago. But the process of going through, so everything that you went through from your, after death experience to launching the book, but then the process of writing the book and having all of these podcast interviews since then, has there been any kind of next level learning or another principle or anything that has come to light for you since then?
It's almost like I didn't realize what God was building in allowing this book to be written, because I always felt a mission with it. I felt my mission was to share the experience. I wasn't given strongly how to share it. So I interpret it as I'm going to share it the way I'm comfortable. And that was verbally. I actually didn't even like people recording it because I almost felt like I was going to discount it. I was going to do it in injustice because it's so much bigger than what I can even describe. And I always struggled with that. Finally, I have my own guidance team that I work with daily, spirit-wise. And finally, with my teams, they told me, hey, stop trying to get out in front of this. Don't let your ego get in front of this. Don't think you need to control the whole thing. You need to enroll some help, some gifted people to help you. And my team that we have now is that team. And I watched God literally assemble them, first with the writer, then the publisher, then the editor, all in one, all in one phase of the project. I just had to get out of it. I had to say, you know what? Stop thinking that I need to do it justice. Allow them to help me to do it justice. And that's when all of a sudden everything started to happen. Yeah. And it was a process. It was, and it's been a beautiful experience to see how it's affected people just sharing it verbally, because I've had almost 20 years of that now. And now I've had 7 months now of sharing it in the book form. So that's a beautiful thing for me too. And I love about the book form, people can read it and reread it and read it and reread it.
Yes.
I have people that they will highlight it. They'll highlight pages. They cut snippets and put on YouTubes and stuff. It's really neat though to see that God's got a bigger work for my experience than even me, and truly a huge, there's a huge mission behind it. And that's why we have ventured into this sanctuary that we're going to be building to help people heal from the past And so that we can start one of those healing processes before people cross over, so that they can get that stuff out of the way now and not have to deal with it then they're good to go. They're good to go for when it is their time. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I have so many questions about that. Would you say that that came as a vision? Suddenly one day it was explained what you should do?
Yes, I knew. So I knew from the second I came back that I now had the gift of healing. I didn't know how to heal. I didn't know how I had the gift, but they showed me I had this new gift of healing. And what I had to finally realize that it was my message, my experience. That's the biggest part of the healing. Is for a lot of people, they've stepped away from God, they've stepped away from religion. And you can still find God outside your religion, or you can still find God inside your religion. But don't look to humans, look to your holy temples. Find God there. That's where you're going to find God the best and the strongest. Or find your creator, whatever name or space you want to call it. But our creator is amazing. And we need to have a personal relationship, every single one of us. And it's really sad because our technology takes up that space. So when we're so addicted to our technology, we never look to God. But I know for a fact, in the near future, there will be a big group of us on Earth where we won't use technology anymore at all. We will have the ability to talk to each other, to essentially do what we do on our technology. We'll be able to do it in our own minds, in our own space, our mind space. And it's going to be a natural gift. It'll be for everybody who leans away from the technology. And it's not going to be microchips. It's not going to be tattoos. It's none of that. It's 100% organic and spirit. And it's a beautiful thing that we'll be able to watch happen if we go the right way. If we stay out of the fear mindset, we will lean that direction. We'll be in the right place at the right time to get that upgrade. But those upgrades are coming. They were ordered a long time ago, and they are on their way. Yeah.
How exciting.
Oh my gosh. And you say, I feel like one of my questions that I had, because you mentioned in the book about having some things that were shared to you about, for the future. And I wonder, is this one of the things that was shared with you, that you were going to get visions of the future? And I did want to ask if there was anything that you could share with us, or anything that has come to pass, because it felt like there was so much more than even the book.
So I was shown where we were in 2003, and I was shown where we're going to be around, I can't say years because there's no such thing as time in heaven. So I can gauge it off of my living distance. And essentially by around my 50th, around in my 50s, which I'm 45 right now, when I'm in my 50s, so 5-6 years is when it's going to, really start, and then it'll accelerate quite a bit faster once it starts. So I was shown where we're going to be, and the where we're going to be is the time that the Bible professes about, that the Quran professes about, and the Torah professes about. It's the time where peace is amongst all of us. There's a lot less of us on earth, but there's absolute peace there. And the lamb literally lays down with the lion and doesn't eat the lion anymore. And it's funny because that means we won't be eating the flesh of animals anymore either at that point. Because this transition that happens, it's going to be a free agency type of transition. It's not going to be forced on anybody, but we'll get to a level of living that love energy from our creator that we won't need to consume any other being. We can consume like fruits and vegetables lovingly as we want, but here's what's really neat. At that time, we'll have the ability to communicate with the plant. So the plant will allow us to taste what we want to taste. So if we want to have a barbecue rib watermelon, we'll have one. Like it will taste how. But I think at that time we're not going to have the taste of barbecue ribs anymore. We're just not going to want that necessarily. And me being a big meat eater my whole life, it took me a long time for that to settle in. I knew it from the time it happened. I knew it from the time I woke up that's where we were going. And here we are 20 years later, and I'm trying to embody that myself. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm trying to embody it myself. And I get better and better and better. And I'm helping my friends get better at it. My the people around me, my family, we're all getting better at it. but we know that's where the future is. So we know we need to start shifting now. And there's other things we need to start shifting, and that's to more towards a life where we don't need things anymore, where we can leave things where they should be, because the things that we think are so precious to us, in our consciousness, we can hold and have those things as often and as many times as we want, but we could leave it where it exists and don't take it with us. We don't have to feel like we need anything. We can walk away from the biggest mansions or the littlest small homes, from the tent, whatever. We could walk away from all of it with a loving knowing that what's in front of us is way better than anything we've ever had, and more beautiful than anything we've ever experienced. And that's our future as humanity. But again, that's only if we dwell in the light, if we dwell in God's light, which is going to be the love space. So think about that. What's the enemies in your life that prevent you from being in the love space, the space where you can be loved or share love? And there's a lot of enemies to that. There's a lot, and most of them are right there on our phones. So we do have to recognize the enemies and start adjusting, making the shifts now, because when the big shift happens, you want to be in the right place. You don't want to be listening to the news and hiding out and going into your bunkers and thinking the whole world's going to end, because it's not. There's going to be a beautiful thing, absolutely freaking amazing. And it's going to be life-changing for everyone who gets to be a part of it. And you won't be a part of it if you're hiding out or you're trying to get away from the events. So yeah, it's really important that we embrace this light. And that's why we have our nonprofit, Living God's Light. It's really to help people build that stronger connection with their own inner voice, with their own inner creator, their creator DNA that's in there, that little sliver of the creator that's there for them. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. You gave me so many messages.
Same.
Literally, I'm a huge meat eater. You know, I'm renowned for like being the bacon queen. I'm just addicted to bacon. But for the last 2 weeks, I've just been having this urge from my body to just stop eating meat. And I've been really resisting it because I'm like, well, what am I going to eat if I don't eat meat? And then I received a message during meditation last week. And I came out of the meditation and it was just so obvious. I don't eat meat anymore. It was just such, it wasn't even a decision. It was almost made for me. I don't eat meat anymore. And I haven't since. And there was such a deeper understanding behind that for me, which everything you just said just really made sense. I'm just moving more towards the light of not eating meat.
Well, what's really neat is people that look at me, they're like, oh, you got to have meat for protein. And I'm like, well, what do elephants do for protein? They're like, what? Right. What do elephants do? What, that grass-fed beef that you just had last night, what did it do for protein?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. What did it? Right. It didn't need protein from eating other cattle, right? So, we don't have to go that route. And here's what's really neat. As our bodies take on these upgrades, because they're happening now. I'm not kidding. These upgrades are all happening to us now. Our pancreases are getting upgraded. Our livers are getting upgraded. They're getting so upgraded that when we get some of these meats, the poisons or the steroids or the antibiotics used on the meats themselves, or heaven forbid, the whatever chemicals they're putting in them, they're so toxic to us, they're going to start making us sick, even to eat them one serving. And it's not me ever putting a judgment on anyone, because I was a huge meat eater, and there was probably a year where I probably ate like 5 vegetables, the rest was all meat. But I'm telling you, like, that this is no judgment on anyone who eats a lot of meat ever. And I love them. I love everyone to be their authentic self. And if that's a meat eater, you do it. But I'll tell you, if you have that little voice inside you saying, hey, try to eat less meat, or go meatless Mondays or meatless Tuesdays, try a couple of days a week, try some recipes, or heaven forbid, just eat fruits and vegetables for a meal like islanders do. And a lot of islanders have a really awesome life. You don't have to worry or stress or be late for work. I mean, to really understand the energy of just eating something wholesome, eating something natural, without chemicals or chemistry or genetically modifying stuff so it's sweeter. I mean, just really be cognizant of your food, because it's better to not eat than to eat these damaging foods. And I was blessed to meet someone that's called a breatharian. And if you really want to blow your mind, do some research onto a breatharian. So
Okay.
breatharians, they will go outside and they will look at the sun. They will sun gaze on sunrise and sunset, and they will do special breathing patterns. And that's all they do for food. They don't eat food. They're called breatharians, and this is a real thing. Most of them are in India, but this is a real thing. And there's been times where these people, these breatharians, are put in like these scientific settings where they're restricted from food and water, and they go days and days beyond what science says is possible. They do it all the time. And here's how they end the study. Well, somebody had to be sneaking them something. That's how they end the study. Even though even though the study has 24/7 live coverage on camera, every entrance to the cell that they essentially live in for weeks is covered by camera, and they still don't accept it. They will not accept that. The one time a day that the breatharians are let outside is to see the sunset and the sunrise, and then they go back in their room. And I'm telling you, this is a real thing. We don't have to consume so much anything. We don't have to consume so much food. We don't have to consume so much calories. We don't have to consume so much oil. We don't have to consume anything we don't want to. Just be really aware of how many times we're just going and doing something because we've always done it. Like, stop doing that. Start reinventing your world, start reinventing your life, and start doing something because you feel pulled to do it. Or start doing something because you have this weird desire to go and sit and lean on a tree for an hour. Do it. It's amazing. It really is. Connect to earth, connect to nature, and really understand the history of humanity on earth. And if you look far enough into our past, you'll see our future. And that's where we're headed right now, is into this amazing future, which is also our past. Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's there's so much in that, because similar to Liz, and we have not spoken about this, but I went through a very similar thing related to food in the last 2 weeks and made the decision that, and I actually feel, Vinney, I'm probably going to be more like you because I am such a carnivore that it's like, I will do the best thing. So I haven't got to the point where, but none of this feels pressurized. None of this feels like I need to. It just dropped in one day, and it's probably more being more intuitively led. And it's like, stand at the fridge rather than thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to make X for dinner because that's what I always make on a Tuesday. Not that I'm that programmed, but it's like, what do I feel like sensing into it? If I don't feel like eating, then don't eat. If you feel like, what is it that your body is asking for, or your spirit needs at this point in time? And I have no doubt that the more energetically elevated we get, or that higher vibrational that we get, then it does not surprise me that, okay, at some point we can just work with the energy of the sun. But we're so conditioned at the moment to 3 meals a day, and you've got to have your meat and 2 veg, and then we've got all of the comfort or trauma response eating that we have to just
trauma
to avoid.
response is huge. And
there's so much in that.
I have a famous cousin who's actually really big in Australia. His name is Don Tolman. So same last name as me. And he's my cousin. So he's a big guy on fasting and eating clean and juicing clean. And I'll tell you, I gotta say this the right way so he never gets in trouble. He is able to help guide people to help their bodies heal, help their own bodies heal themselves of crazy problems by just getting out of the Western environment, getting out of that 3 meals a day, going towards an intuitive eating natural, eating clean, and only eating when you're hungry, or taking some time, even long periods of time, of doing fasting, doing water fasts or doing juice fasts. He's got some amazing content. He's all over podcasts and YouTube as well. So
we will definitely check
Don
him out.
Tolman.
Absolutely.
And what's really neat is I was sitting there doing a meditation when my guides led me to him. And then come to find out he's my cousin. So I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Oh, so you didn't know?
Yeah. So he's verified as like in my family tree. We're cousins. Yeah. So it's really cool. It's funny how God does that though. How our Creator has these really cool plans. The Creator puts up the fabric of life, and all of us are threads going in and out of that fabric. And there's some beautiful synchronicities that are planned long before they happen. And then when they happen, you're like, oh my gosh, all this had to happen for that to happen. It's a beautiful thing, beautiful thing. So yeah, I'm a firm believer in what Don Tolman teaches about eating clean, fasting clean, and helping your body heal itself. Because that's really what he helps people learn how to do. Yeah.
Fantastic.
One question I have, I discovered that I had this incredible ability also to communicate with spirits and guides just a few years ago. How does this happen for you? Like when you say you get these messages now, can you explain that?
So many times someone will ask something that there's no possible way I would know the answer. And the answer is literally just deposited in my mind. And then later I'll go do research on whether that was, I won't say anything. And then later I'll go do research, and sure enough, that was the answer to it. And it was after years of that going on that I just started to trust that. And it got to a point where a couple of my coworkers at one of my jobs were like, oh, why don't you just Google Vinney? Just go over to Google Vinney. He's going to answer everything. And a lot of times I would have the answer, but again, it's not me. It's not me. It's just I'm plugged into that energy that allows answers to drop. And here's what's really neat about that. I can sit down with quantum physicists and communicate with them, and spirits like guiding me without degrees to understand what they're talking about. And then I can sit down with engineers and understand the engineer math and why that's so important, understand how it's important, but without actually going and getting my engineering degree. And what's really neat is all of us have this. All of us, we all have this. It's just we look for this for our answers. This is where we're looking for our answers. We're not going in here. But the more we lean away from the technology and into the technology, the inner technology, the spirit technology, that's when it gets stronger and stronger. But what you do is you find out where your baby voice is, start recognizing it and following it, or at least acknowledging it and writing it down and beginning a relationship there. That baby voice grows up to a big kid voice, and then it becomes very clear. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's multiple voices. Who is this that's sending me this? Oh, that's such and such guide. And then you can name your guides. You can start, give them names or find out their names. They'll help you through the whole process. It's really a beautiful thing. But the hardest part is a lot of spirit communicates in symbolism. So learning that symbolism is a big part of it. So the symbolism they might use for me would be very different for you, Liz, because with you, Liz, like the symbols that you would come in your repertoire of your life would be very different than what would come up for me. But what's really neat is all of us carry like a label in who we are of what a symbol is going to mean. So once you unpack a symbol and acknowledge it first, write it down, later it'll come to you what that symbol means. And over time, you can actually create like flashcards. You'll get better and better and better at this. And then all of a sudden, wow, I can communicate with spirit. And it's a beautiful thing. It's an awesome thing.
I love that.
And I'm geeking out.
Yeah,
I'm geeking out on this because we explore, Liz and I explore this as a topic, and your inner voice and how to uncover it and how messages come through to people. We ask every guest, I question Liz on her psychic abilities so I can better understand it. And I love that you've given us another level of understanding. Plus you use the term spiritual impressions, which I love. Yes, I because for me, impression, so your inner voice, you think, should I be hearing something? But when you say the word impressions, it's like it could be a symbol, it could be a voice, it could be a picture, it could
be anything.
Something. Yep. Yeah. So I love that term.
Or if you see an odd insect like fly in front of you out of nowhere, there's some energy to that. Anything outside of the mundane, I take feathers, pennies, crystals, special flowers that I find, special birds that fly right up to me and they won't leave me alone, or an insect that you can't get rid of no matter where you go. It follows you all day, even in different buildings. These are messages from spirit. It is. And here's what's really neat though, is as you begin this process, there's a really cool exercise. And this is something everybody can do. Right when you wake up, within your hour of power, right when you wake up, or right before you go to bed, ask, who needs me? Who needs me to reach out to them? And here's what's really neat. You will have faces, drop right into that slot. You will have names drop right into that slot. And I challenge you a second challenge. The second challenge is to follow up and do it. Reach out to that person. And here's what you'll get. Almost every time you'll have them be honest and say, you know what? I was thinking about you. I can't believe you just reached out. Or they'll say, wow, you had no idea how important it was that you reached out to me. I needed somebody to talk to right now. And here's the coolest thing. We are all fingers on God's hands. And that exercise is who needs me today is a prick, a kind of a tinkle into the finger of who needs you, and it follow over to who needs you. Now that connection is stronger there. Now, if someone between these two needs connection, now you have that connection, and it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. It's hard to understand, but I'm telling you, that's how it works. So begin first, lovingly asking God, say, God, who needs me today? And God will drop a name, a face, an image, someone who needs you. And sometimes it's somebody who's deceased. So that means that, hey, let's pray for them today. Let's meditate while we think about good times with them. Or, hey, let's watch an old home movie with them on it. And you'll be amazed at what comes out of your experience. Wow. When you follow this little breadcrumb, you can really begin to build a strong relationship with spirit energy, with God. Yeah.
What an incredible exercise to do. I'm so going to give that a go tomorrow.
And we love practical applications.
Yes.
We always give some homework as we do our podcasts. I know we're conscious of time and you have been so generous with us, but I need to ask one question. Your beautiful wife, Andrea. Now, I have never met her. I have never even seen a photograph of her, but how you describe her, how your face lights up as you speak about your experience with her. And behind every person who has had like a very visible awakening or spiritual path in some way, there's always other people who are maybe a little bit behind the scenes who are supporting that. But it made me think very much, and Liz and I had this quick conversation before you joined this morning, just about soul connection. So whether it's a soul partner, a twin soul, a soul contract, do you believe is that the energy of when you both met?
all of the above. All of the above. Like we have a soul contract. She's my twin flame. She's not just my other half. She's like my better 7/8. Like she is what helps anchor me here in a good way, and keep my feet on the ground so I can get things done and be the being that I am. But I'll tell you, none of my book or anything would exist without her, because it's her support that has gotten me here. She's the reason I'm here on earth, because I for sure would have found a dangerous enough job by now. That I'd be back in heaven for sure by now. So, but what's really neat though is when we first met, our eyes locked. She opened my friend's house. She opened the door, and we just stared at each other for like 2 minutes, and that's a long time when you don't know that person. and then finally, after like 2 minutes, my brain kicked in and said, "Can I come in?" And then she's like, "Oh yeah, come on in." We just had this surreal moment, and we joke around that we're an arranged marriage because we feel God arranged our marriage. Because we knew we were going to get married before we knew each other, and before we'd even had any chance to even really know each other at all. Like we'd never even been on a date, and we knew we were going to get married. So that was quite weird for me. I was one of those guys that when the marriage word was even said, I would be like, okay, let's see. I'll be done with this relationship by like the end of the month, probably. So I was a bit afraid of it. And it wasn't the commitment; it was just the seriousness. And I probably had a higher knowing that the right one was out there for me with her, that I needed to be in the right place. But we felt like both of us were kind of like shoved together by God, by life, and that's what put us together. And we knew once we were together, we couldn't be apart. We right after we got married, I went up to Alaska and built a couple of custom homes, and didn't see her for only like 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks. And it felt like a year. It honestly felt like a year, because she was my other half already. I would call her, think about her constantly, and I'd never had that about anybody before. So that was really, really amazing for me. And to have my twin flame, absolutely. Yeah.
And I love in your book how you share that on your first few dates together, random strangers would comment and go, "Oh, you're such a happily married couple."
Yeah. It was really neat. Everywhere we go, they'd, "Oh, how long have you guys been married?" And we're like, we're on our first date. But it was so often that we started to laugh about it, because we started to have this idea that who was going to say it next. Was it going to be the waitress? Was it going to be the cashier at the gas station? Who was it going to be? And of course, every time we had that expectation, it would happen. Yeah. It was really funny though. It was really funny. And it was because we needed that, both of us did, because it was very scary to feel this like pressure that you're supposed to marry someone you don't even know, but you have almost like this gravitation where you're being pulled to each other. And even the times where we tried to like not be right with each other, life would put us right back together. So we knew we need to get out of the way, let things happen, and pick a date. So we met in April and we got married that August. So we had a very short engagement and short dating. Yeah.
When you know, and I mean that there's no better story than that for divine guidance.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And even to
once
honor,
you know.
to honor her through this podcast as well. It's like, we know the good work you're doing in the background.
Oh,
It's like,
and
well
I'll tell you, there's no one else in the whole world that could have gone through what she's gone through with me, because she's been holding my hand on this journey of craziness. And I mean real craziness, like certifiably craziness going on around her. I was driving down the road once when I freaked out. I had to stop because I felt like I was running over dead people everywhere. And I had to stop. And she was right there. She's like, "No problem." She gets over. I'll take the car. And not for a single second did she even say, "My husband's crazy." Not for a second. All she did was hold my hand while she drove. And that's the kind of love that I've experienced through her, and how I know that she's my twin flame.
How beautiful is that? And just to share, all of this incredible story is in your book, which Diane and I both read very quickly after listening to the podcast. We just wanted more. And your book is called The Light After Death. Where can we find your book, Vinney?
Well, I actually wasn't going to do a book for years, and I would just share my experience verbally the way I just did just now. I would share it in like a 30-minute format, 60-minute format, or 90-minute format for different church groups, that kind of thing. But over the years, a lot of people, they kept telling me like, "We need to get a book. We need a book so we can like re-listen to this or reread it." And so first thing I did was actually record a recorded version of my experience. And then I started working on doing a book. It took me a long time though. And so now we do have a book, thank goodness. It's been out like 6 months. And it's doing great. You can get on Amazon, Kindle, Audible. Internationally, it is only on Kindle and Audible. But if you need, if you want to do like a box of books, or you want to do just a couple, you can reach out through my website, and we do ship internationally there. We just charge the national rate, whatever it is, on top of the books. Yeah.
And what's your website?
So the website is thelighafterdeath.com. That's the book website. And I actually have a nonprofit. My nonprofit is livinggodslight.com. And you can find me there, and you can reach out through that site. And they kind of link to each other. So if you hit enough buttons on one, you end up on the other. Yeah.
Vinney, what can we even say? I mean, you are just amazing. Your story is amazing. More than anything, I think it leaves us all just feeling a whole lot better about being in Earth School and going on our own mission. And yeah, thank you so much. This has just been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast.
And I think that Drake put it the best, that I know it's going to be hard, but I know it's going to be worth it. Earth School, it's going to be worth it.
That's it for another episode.
Thank you for listening. Did you know that we are building a movement of 1 million people who are spiritual as fuck? We would love for you to join us. You can start by leaving us a review on Apple Podcast. Every month, I'm going to intuitively choose one person and do a psychic reading for you. So
follow us on Instagram, send in your stories and topic suggestions, and join the movement
at spiritual.a.f. Until next time.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.